Given a long enough timeline, we know you're going to pass on. While many things can go wrong when that happens, there are generally four major categories of how things can go wrong. First, family frustration and delays. What about future costs? What about possibly losing your assets? Finally, fights may just break out. Hi, I'm John Strohmeyer with Strohmeyer Law, and this time we're talking about how you can minimize the future fights that may be coming once you pass. Now, a lot of estate planning comes down to what happens to your stuff when you die. But that's not the only thing we want to think about. What we also want to know is how can we minimize the risks that are associated with any plan. I listed the four horsemen of the estate planning apocalypse: delays, costs, fights, and assets. This covers most of the problems that we can see coming down the line. This time we're talking about future fights and how we can hopefully avoid them. So when we start thinking about this, we want to start with who are your family members, whether or not you're actually related to them. If it's somebody who's in your family or your extended family, we want to know who these players are. Because if we don't know who they are, we are not going to be able to address whether or not they're going to cause problems later on. So what you want to do is start by figuring out who is in your family, who's going to expect something, and who is maybe on that list that should also be in there. When we start preparing that list, we want to make sure we know, are there any people who could cause problems when you're not here? In a lot of cases, there are people in your life who think they have something coming, but their behavior is being held in check because they know you're still here. They are waiting for you to pass, and then the long knives come out because they're going to get what they're entitled to. The best thing to do is make sure you've identified who those folks are now, rather than waiting until you've passed. Why? Well, it's been said that you'll never know a person until you've shared an inheritance with them. And while I don't do any litigation, I've seen it come up time and time again, that mom and dad never really knew that there was going to be a problem, or maybe they knew that there was a problem but didn't really spend the time identifying the issues before they passed. What happened? Well, things go a little south once mom and dad are gone because they were the only ones keeping the peace. Well, what can we do about this? If you've got people in your life who you know are going to fight, you want to do your best to identify them as soon as possible. One way to start smoking things out, if you don't know or if you don't see something coming down the line, is have the meeting with your family so you've gone over what you have and who can expect to get what. The point of this meeting is to help smoke out who may cause a problem later. Because if you can say, I'm going to leave equal shares to all three of you, and none of you will be the executor, but the bank will be a professional executor and trustee for all of you, you can start identifying where the problems are coming sooner. And that's the point. You want to have that conversation because if you can get somebody to show that they don't like what's going to happen, you're better warned about what will happen. And if you're better warned, you're better able to put the protections in place to minimize what will happen. Really, what I like to tell clients is that surprises are really only welcome at birthdays, and it's never welcome when it comes to an inheritance. So think about this. When was the last time you discussed your estate plan with your family so they knew what's coming? The next thing to know is, well, not every asset can easily be divided among your beneficiaries. So it's possible that your plan may result in your beneficiaries receiving undivided interests in assets that they can't share. Think about a 100-acre ranch and having 3 children. Well, is everybody going to like an undivided 1/3 share with their siblings? It's possible that one of your children may not be able to afford the taxes and upkeep on their share. That may not be a good thing to leave to them. So making sure that you can avoid that future fight by planning now on how to address the distribution of certain assets. You want to make sure that those special assets aren't going to create a fight when everybody doesn't get an equal share, or it goes to somebody who may not want or can even deal with that share. Other ways to deal with things are minimizing potential friction points. So what you want to think about here is using banks and they're transfer on death or pay on death provisions to provide gifts for certain people. The good news with transfer on death and pay on death provisions is that you're taking the asset out of probate and you're making sure that whatever goes to that beneficiary goes to them outright. They don't have to wait for the will to be probated. They don't have to even be notified of the probate at all. What will happen is that the bank will be responsible for transferring it. What this can do is take a potential person who can either cause problems, either because they are the problem or because their mere presence can cause a problem, out of the equation when it comes to probate. What you ultimately are looking for is how do you minimize that fight? And, well, if you want to leave something to somebody, you're not potentially allowing an executor or a trustee who doesn't like having to give something over to them have to deal with that. That's the best part of these accounts. So what we look for here is how can we make it easy and potentially avoid a fight? So there are a lot of options, and here's what we want to think about. Ultimately, when it comes to fights, we know that there may be people in our lives who can cause problems later on. What we want to first do is figure out who those people are and figure out how we can neutralize them and neutralize their ability to cause problems for others. Because when they start creating these fights, those fights get expensive and it really is only going to benefit the lawyers. So once you've figured out who those people are, figure out what those potential pain points are. One of the things to think about may be, well, is it a particular asset that's going to cause the problem? If so, figure out, is there a better way to get those assets to people? A favorite tool I like are pay on death or transfer on death bank accounts. These allow you to select the amount that you want to go to a person while still retaining control over that asset. Thanks so much for watching. If you've got other questions about this, go ahead and leave a question in the comments below. Also, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.